Jaya Nilo Premadana Karuna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chaya Thakura Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kaha Dasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Mata Patita Pavan Kaha Moram Bhatta Juga Kaha Kaviraj Eka Kali Kota Gela Goranataraj Pashane Kuti Bo Mata Anale Pashibo Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kotangele Pamo Se Sabba Sangira Sangi Je Koilo Vilas Se Sangana Paya Kandi Narottamada Jaya Nilo Premadana Akaruna Prachur Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Chaya Thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. You can leave that open. Thanks. So today is the glorious disappearance day. of Srila Haridas Thakura. Excuse me, Haridas Thakura. And I have a selection of things I'd like to share with you. I didn't get to communicate with Mukunda Prabhu about this special verse, so I'll just chant it myself. Maybe we can do it Pushpanjali style. See how that works. Okay, so this is Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Urmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, we're going to read from this chapter 11 of the Antya Leela of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is entitled The Disappearance of Haridas Thakur. It's 108 verses, not an accident, and it describes in detail a wonderful passing. So the first verse of that chapter goes like this: Namami Haridasam tam Chaitanyam Tangcha Tat Prabhum Sangstitam Apayan Murtim Svanke Kritva Nanartayaha. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Haridas Thakur and his master, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who danced with the body of Haridas Thakur on his lap. Now, before we read this pastime, I'm going to read some of the wonderful qualities of Haridas Thakur from other parts of the Shastra, and we're going to begin with the Chaitanya Bhagavat, which describes in quite detail the parts of his earlier life, which are not so much spoken of in the CC. Haridas Thakur appeared in the village of Budhan. Now, he was senior to Lord Chaitanya, and was he contemporary with Advaita Acharya? Yeah, elder of that age. By his mercy, the holy names of Krishna were preached in that area. Then he first came to Pulia, and then went to the house of Advaita Acharya in Shantipur. I'm not so familiar with the geography. Pulia is fairly nearby Shantipur. Where he became intoxicated by chanting the holy names of Krishna in the association of Advaita Acharya. Being mad with love of Krishna in the form of chanting his names, Haridas was more than anyone free from the least inclination for things other than Krishna. Seeing his pure transformations of ecstasy, the Brahmin community of Pulia began to show him special respect. At that time, the most sinful Qazi complained against Haridas to the Mohammedan king that although Haridas was born in a Mohammedan family, he followed and preached the names of the Hindus' God. So I was always wondering about this. This is not the same Qazi that Lord Chaitanya converted, the one who broke the drum in Navadvip, later on. This Qazi was more cruel, to say the least. So what happened was that after this encounter with Advaita Acharya, he went back to Pulia, and he built a little cottage there, and he began chanting his 300,000 names a day. This was his sadhana. That's 192 rounds, in case you're curious. And they asked Prabhupada one time about how long that took, and it came up to about 16 hours a day of chanting. And I measured it. That's average of 5 minutes a round, which is quite a clip. So he was chanting there, and as described here, he was being shown great respect by the Brahmins there and so forth. So the Qazis thought that this was a tremendous challenge to the Muslim community, because he converted. He was born in a Muslim family. So he complained to the Nawab, the king, and the king gave the Qazi free rein to do what he wanted to do, basically. So they arrested Haridas Thakur. And they said I forget what it's called, but there's a certain vow that the Muslims take of declaring their faith to Islam and so forth. Says, okay, this is not good. You have converted. You're born in a glorious Muslim family and converted to these low-born Hindus. They were ruling at that time, that part of India anyway. And So you can get back in good graces by saying, this, reconverting basically and saying this vow. So he said, well, at first he said, well, look, there's so many of the Hindus have been turned into Muslims. What's the problem if one Muslim becomes a Hindu? So they became, very angry at him for that. And finally the Qazis, so they said, well, you have to stop chanting Hare Krishna. And so he said, famously, I don't know the Bengali, you can cut me up into little pieces, but I'll never stop chanting the holy name. What is it? Thousands and thousands of pieces. So that was the last straw, so to speak. And they said they brought forth two very adamant executioners, and he said, beat him in 22 marketplaces. Now, that word 22 is in there. I thought that we'll just beat him, in the marketplace until he expires. Usually it takes two or three, and then people get killed. But he didn't expire, and so it went to 22. But it actually says beat him in 22 marketplaces. So they started beating these two executioners, with thick sticks, whatever they had, and he was, of course, chanting like anything, both orally and in his mind, completely absorbed. And you can't help thinking of Prahlad Maharaj, everything that his father tried to do, and boiling in oil, throwing off the cliff, crushing under the elephants, poisoning, everything that you could think of to kill him. And he was unharmed. Not only did he survive, but Prahlad was unharmed, and so Haridas Thakur, he didn't feel any pain. It's described several verses. He didn't feel it. He was so absorbed in the holy name, and he was protected. His body was protected. So this is amazing. And the executions are going on and on, and finally they're getting in great anxiety because if they don't execute Haridas, then they'll be killed by the Qazi. So Haridas was seeing that they're, expressing more and more anxiety, and explained why. And he said, well, if that's the problem, then I'll just die. So he went into high samadhi where they couldn't even perceive any breathing, He said, oh, finally. So they carried what they thought was the corpse back to the Qazi. And they said, what should we do? Should we bury him? He said, no, because it'll become a famous place of pilgrimage. He'll get more fame that way, Throw him into the river, and the Ganges River. And that way, that'll be finished. So that's what they did, and we threw him in the river, and he came out of his samadhi and went onto the other side of the river and kept chanting, Now, they had promised, the king had promised, if you can withstand, if you can survive this execution, then we'll understand that you're a great saint and a peer. They call them peers, the Muslims. And we'll let you do anything you want, So after that, the king said, okay, you can chant wherever you want, do whatever you want, and he became more famous. And the executioners especially were, they came down, I think, with some diseases. They were, got some super severe reactions. So that was, you can imagine the fame that he got after that. So then that was perhaps the most famous of his pastimes. Now, so I noticed this when I first heard of these pastimes of Haridas Thakur, that he showed the highest level of tolerance, both for the positive and the negative. In other words, when you talk about tolerance, we usually think, I got to tolerate physical pain, and even more painful is insults. That's another form of tolerance. Shanti, we meant to show. But you also have to tolerate the allurements of the material energy, right? You have to be equipoised and dhira and both of those. So this is the most severe torment and torture that you can imagine. I mean, you can just imagine and he wasn't moved at all. And on the other side, 2 times it happened. So it describes when he first left, right as he came back to Pulia, and he built himself a little cottage, and a little bhajan kutir, we call it. And he started chanting his 300,000 names a day, 192 rounds. Now, there was another envious Muslim nearby named Ramchandra Khan, because he was getting so much fame and honor, and respect. And so he was envious of Haridas Thakur. So his plan was that he was going to seduce, make him fall down from his vows, from his renunciation, which was, perfect. So he brought forth a few prostitutes, and he picked one out, very young, very attractive. Here's your assignment. You go and you seduce Haridas Thakura, and as soon as it happens, he expected it would happen, right away, and so I'll send my constable with you, and as soon as you have sex with him, we'll arrest him, and his name and fame will be finished. That was his plan. So Haridas was very young at that time, young man, in the early 20s, I suppose. And he's chanting. So this lady comes, and the describer describes, she came to his door of the little cottage, and she sat down, and she was perfectly dressed, perfume, the whole thing, and she exposed part of her body, and she said, "Oh, you're so handsome, so forth. I can't be peaceful until I have union with you," So Haridas, he knew about the whole plan, and he explains later, he decided to stay there to deliver her. So he's chanting, and said, yes, no problem. I will certainly fulfill your desires, but I've taken a vow to chant. First night he said, I have to finish my chanting, so you just please sit there a while, So she sat, and he's chanting. Finally the sun rises, So the first time he said, she just got up and left. And then went back to the Ramchandra Khan. You imagine what he was saying. Well, what happened? So she said, nothing happened yet, but he promised it'll tomorrow. No problem. And then, your mission will be fulfilled. So he goes back the second night, and this time he says, please forgive my offenses. Haridas says to her, please forgive my offenses for last night, I just couldn't finish my rounds. I've taken a vow to chant 10 million names this month, which is like 300,000 a day times 30. I think it comes to about 10 million. And I just couldn't finish last night, but I'll surely finish tonight. So just sit there, and listen. So by this time, she's a little purified. So she also chanting, Hari, Hari, she's also chanting along, listening. And of course, the sun rises, and Haridas, says she got a little anxious and agitated near the end of the night, and he says, I just couldn't finish it. You come back tonight, everything will be fine, So the third night, now she's getting purified by this time. Third night, she says she comes a little earlier, and she's, anxious. And so he's chanting, but by this time she's completely, realizes what's going on. And by the time the sun rises, she offers her basin and says, "Oh, please forgive me. I was assigned to do this. But now I see you're actually a great saint." So Haridas says, "Oh, I knew that Ramchandra Khan's plan from the get-go, and but I stayed here just to deliver you." And so she says, "Yes, I've led such a sinful life. Please deliver me." She surrenders to him as a guru. So what should I do? So he says, "Well, you take all of your possessions and you donate them to the Brahmins. That's the first thing. And then you come back here and you stay in this house because I'm leaving. You stay in this little hut." And you just chant Hare Krishna, Now, this little detail I had forgotten. I'm sorry? In front of Tulsi. I'm sorry, yeah. So he had planted a Tulsi. He was Haridas chanting Tulsi in front of Tulsi, and she would then chant in front of Tulsi. She shaved up. She actually shaved her head. And although Haridas didn't tell her to do that, she did that. She knew what the tradition was. So she did exactly what he said. And she became a very famous Vaishnava, very pure and honored. And people would come and offer her alms, she'd starve. Sometimes it was nothing, she would fast. And it describes how by living this austere life, she was able to control her senses, and all that chanting, she very soon developed love of God and the symptoms of love of God. So this was, a very seminal, act, one of his first miracles, you might say, or most amazing things. Now, later on, not too far later, Maya Devi herself came and did a similar program, and she was attempting to seduce him, and he was unseducible. And what was her prayer? I forget. Do you remember? She had a request from him also. Yeah. So in other words, even personified illusory energy couldn't move him from his vow and from his renunciation, his detachment. So on both sides, from the Maya is going to hit us from both sides, from the threefold miseries, birth, death, old age, and disease, so many difficulties. And on the other side, to keep us attached, and she has allurements. So Krishna consciousness means to become equipoised. And sukha dukkha samakirtva. What is it? What is it? To take that, to get that steady intelligence, and Haridas Thakura perfectly demonstrated that. So I'm going to now move to the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's a chapter called "The Glories of Haridas Thakur." Let's see if I can. Oh, here it is. Okay, this is Ancha 3. I'm sorry. Ancha 3, which is titled "The Glories of Haridas Thakur," and the first pastime here has to do with how he went to Benapola, the forest there. Oh, this is describing that his encounter with Ramchandra Khan's representative. Now, what happened to Ramchandra Khan? So he was a big offender, and eventually Nityananda came to town, and he happened to stay in the mandap there of Ramchandra Khan. But Ramchandra Khan was offended by that, and he said, "Oh, this isn't suitable for you. You should leave." And Nityananda took great offense, and he says, "Yeah, you're right. This is the slaughter cows here," and went. So what happened was that the Ramchandra Khan was some kind of a tax representative, but he was cheating, and so the minister came and figured out what he was doing, and took all his money and arrested him, and the whole town was emptied out, and he lost everything. That was his punishment for that. But it also describes in this chapter the wonderful interaction between Lord Chaitanya and Haridas Thakur. That Lord Chaitanya was lamenting. He said, "How are all these yamanas and lechas going to be saved? What am I going to do?" And so Haridas Thakur was saying, "Oh, you've already saved them. And just by coming here and loudly proclaiming the holy name." This was another big thing with Haridas Thakur. It was that he quoted from Shastra, I looked this up, that the loud chanting, even of japa, is recommended because the unmoving living entities can hear it, and in other words, it's preaching. It's beneficial for everyone. And so he was saying, well, Lord Chaitanya, when you were in Jharkhand and you were chanting, and the animals were chanting, well, all the non-moving living entities, the trees and everyone also benefited. So you've actually already delivered everybody, even though it's not obvious, by that chanting, as reverberating. And then he explained that when everyone goes back to Godhead, then the non-developed living entities will fill up the universe again. In other words, that's why things are going on. So this Prabhupada says, this relief of Lord Chaitanya's anxiety is what we should also embrace. In other words, Lord Chaitanya is anxious that everybody get the holy name and get his books and get the transcendental knowledge. And so, Prabhupada dedicated his life to that, to fulfilling that prediction, Pratibhityacha Yadanagari Gram, that my name will be chanted everywhere. And so this idea of relieving the Lord's anxiety, who is so anxious for the deliverance of the people, this is what Haridas Thakur did, and Lord Chaitanya was so pleased with him. He started glorifying him with this. He had 100 mouths, and enjoying great pleasure by glorifying Haridas Thakur. So that's another pastime. Another one was he had this stayed in the cave, and people would come and see him, but there was this acrid smell there. They couldn't stay there for very long, even a few minutes. So it happened that there was this huge snake in there, a cobra, a poisonous snake. Haridas Thakur said, "I don't notice anything." He wasn't affected by it. But anyone who came there said, so he said, "Okay, since you're bothered by it," he wanted to accommodate his guests. If that snake doesn't leave by the end of the day, I'll leave myself and we'll go to another place. So as soon as shortly after he said that, these huge snakes left the cave. And everyone, whoa, the super soul in the heart of that snake, is serving Haridas Thakur. So there's many pastimes like that. So I think we'll read now from this chapter, since it has some length to it. And this is the... all right, we read that verse. So this is in Puri. So when Lord Chaitanya settled in Puri, Haridas Thakur came there, and Lord Chaitanya made sure he had a very comfortable place, to chant, quiet, and every day he would go to see him, because Haridas was so humble. He said, "No, I'm low-born. I can't go to the temple. I don't want to get." So Haridas would go there, and he would go to see Rupa also, who also considered himself, because he had served the Muslims in the government, that he was too contaminated. He wouldn't go in. So it's described, Jagannath would go to see them personally in the form of Lord Chaitanya. So, and he would get remnants of Lord Chaitanya's food, Jagannath's prasad. So this is chapter 11, Anjalila, text 16. One day Govinda, the personal servant of Lord Chaitanya, went in great jubilation to deliver the remnants of Lord Jagannath's food to Haridas Thakur. This was a daily affair. When Govinda came to Haridas, he saw that Haridas Thakur was lying on his back and chanting his rounds very slowly. "Please rise and take your Mahaprasadam," Govinda said. Haridas replied, "Today I shall observe fasting. I have not finished chanting my regular number of rounds," 192 rounds. "How then can I eat? But you have brought Mahaprasadam, so how can I neglect it?" Saying this, he offered prayers to the Mahaprasadam and took a little portion and ate it. The next day, Lord Chaitanya went to Haridas's place and inquired from him, "Haridas, are you well?" Haridas offered his obeisances to the Lord and replied, "My body is all right, but my mind and intelligence are not well." Lord Chaitanya further inquired, "Can you ascertain what your disease is?" Haridas replied, "My disease is that I cannot complete my rounds." It's a good instruction for us. "Now that you have become old," the Lord said, "you may reduce the number of rounds you chant daily. You are already liberated, and therefore you need not follow the regulative principles very strictly. Your role in this incarnation is to deliver the people in general. You have abundantly preached the glories of the holy name in this world." The Lord concluded, "Now, therefore, please reduce the fixed number of times you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra." Haridas Thakur replied, "Kindly hear my real plea, my Lord. I was born in an inferior family. My body is most abominable. I always engage in low work. Therefore I am the lowest, most condemned of men. I am unseeable and untouchable, but you have accepted me as your servant. This means that you have delivered me from a hellish condition and raised me to the Vaikuntha platform. My dear Lord, you are the fully independent personality of Godhead. You act by your own free will. You cause the whole world to dance and act as you like. My dear Lord, by your mercy, you've made me dance in many ways. For example, I was offered the Shraddha Patra, which should have been offered to first-class Brahmins. This is a pastime at Vaidacharya. This Shraddha Patra is offered for the departed ancestors, And the remnants are often, offered to the most exalted persons, usually Brahmin, Vaishnava. So they offered it to Haridas Thakur, even though he was born in a Muslim family, and he protested, and Vaida said, "No, offering to you is better than offering to millions of Brahmins." It was important, So this happened much earlier. The verse I'm on is Antya 11:30. I ate from it, even though I was born in a family of meat-eaters. I have had one desire for a very long time. I think that quite soon, my Lord, you will bring to a close your pastimes within this material world. I wish that you not show me this closing chapter of your pastimes. Before that time comes, kindly let my body fall down in your presence. I wish to catch your lotus-like feet upon my heart and see your moon-like face. With my tongue I shall chant your holy name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. That is my desire. Kindly let me give up my body in this way. O most merciful Lord, if by your mercy it is possible, kindly grant my desire. Let this low-born body fall down before you. You can make possible this perfection of all my desires. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, My dear Haridas, Krishna is so merciful that he must execute whatever you want. But whatever happiness is mine is all due to your association. It's not fitting for you to go away and leave me behind. Catching the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Haridas Thakur said, "My Lord, do not create an illusion. Although I am so fallen, you must certainly show me this mercy." "My Lord, there are many respectable personalities, millions of devotees who are fit to sit on my head. They are all helpful in your pastimes. My Lord, if an insignificant insect like me dies, what's the loss? If an ant dies, where is the loss to the material world? My Lord, you are always affectionate to your devotees. I am just an imitation devotee, but nevertheless, I wish that you fulfill my desire. That is my expectation." Because he had to perform his noon duties, Lord Chaitanya got up to leave, but it was settled that the following day, after he saw Lord Jagannath, he would return to visit Haridas Thakur. After embracing him, Lord Chaitanya left to perform his noon duties and went to the sea to take his bath. The next morning, after visiting the Jagannath temple, Lord Chaitanya, accompanied by all his devotees, went hastily to see Haridas Thakur. Lord Chaitanya and the devotees came before Haridas Thakur, who offered his respects to the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and all the Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya inquired, "My dear Haridas, what's the news?" Haridas replied, "My Lord, whatever mercy you can bestow upon me." Upon hearing this, Lord Chaitanya immediately began great congregational chanting in the courtyard. The Vakreshwar Pandit was the chief dancer. Headed by Swarup Damodar Goswami, all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya surrounded Haridas and began congregational chanting. In front of all the great devotees like Ramananda Roy, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Lord Chaitanya began to describe the holy attributes of Haridas Thakur. As he described the transcendental attributes of Haridas, Lord Chaitanya seemed to possess 5 mouths. The more he described, the more his great happiness increased. After hearing of the transcendental qualities of Haridas Thakur, all the devotees present were struck with wonder. They all offered their respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of Haridas Thakur. Haridas made Lord Chaitanya sit down in front of him, and then he fixed his eyes like 2 bumblebees on the lotus face of the Lord. He held the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya on his heart, and then took the dust of the feet of all the devotees present and put it on his head. He began to chant the holy name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, again and again. As he drank the sweetness of the face of the Lord, his tears constantly glided down from his eyes. While chanting the holy name, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, he gave up his air of life and left his body. Seeing the wonderful death of Haridas Thakur by his own will, which was just like a great mystic yogi's, everyone remembered the passing away of Bhishma Dev. Did you know about that? Did you ever read? Yeah. So that's very famous. There was a tumultuous noise as they all chanted the holy names, Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya became overwhelmed with ecstatic love. The Lord raised the body of Haridas Thakur and placed it on his lap. Then he began to dance in the courtyard in great ecstatic love. Because of Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic love, all the devotees were helpless. And in ecstatic love, they also began to dance and chant congregationally. Lord Chaitanya danced for some time, and then Swarup Damodar Goswami informed him of other rituals for the body of Thakur Haridas. The body of Haridas Thakur was then raised onto a carrier that resembled an airship and taken to the sea, accompanied by congregational chanting. Lord Chaitanya danced in front of the procession, and Vakreshwar Pandit, along with other devotees, chanted and danced behind him. Lord Chaitanya bathed the body of Haridas Thakur in the sea, and then declared, "From this day on, this sea has become a great pilgrimage site." Everyone drank the water that had touched the lotus feet of Haridas Thakur, and then they smeared remnants of Lord Jagannath's sandalwood pulp all over Haridas Thakur's body. After a hole was dug in the sand, the body of Haridas Thakur was placed into it. Remnants of Lord Jagannath, such as his silken ropes, sandalwood pulp, food, and cloth, were placed on the body. All around the body, the devotees performed congregational chanting. I'm going to say Sankirtan. And Vakreshwar Pandit danced in jubilation. With his transcendental hands, Lord Chaitanya personally covered the body of Haridas Thakur with sand, chanting, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. The devotees covered the body of Haridas with sand and then constructed a platform upon the site. The platform was protected all around by fencing. Lord Chaitanya danced and chanted all around the platform, and as the holy name of Hari roared tumultuously, the whole universe became filled with the vibration. After Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya bathed in the sea with his devotees. swimming and playing in the water in great jubilation. After circumambulating the tomb of Haridas, Lord Chaitanya went to the Singadwar gate of the Jagannath temple. The whole city chanted in congregation, and the tumultuous sound vibrated all over the city. Approaching the Singadwar gate, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spread his cloth and began to beg prasadam from all the shopkeepers there. I am begging prasadam for a festival, honoring the passing away of Haridas Thakur, the Lord said. Please give me alms, charity. Hearing this, all the shopkeepers immediately came forward with big baskets of prasadam, which they jubilantly delivered to Lord Chaitanya. However, Swarup Damodar stopped them, and the shopkeepers returned to their shops and sat down with their baskets. Swarup Damodar sent Lord Chaitanya back to his residence and kept with him 4 Vaishnavas and 4 servant carriers. Swarup Damodar said to all the shopkeepers, "Deliver to me 4 palmfuls of prasadam from each and every item." In this way, varieties of prasadam were collected, then packed up in different loads and carried on the heads of the 4 servants. Not only did Swarup Damodar Goswami bring prasadam, but Vanyanath Pattanayaka and Kashi Mishra also sent large quantities. Lord Chaitanya made all the devotees sit in rows and personally began to distribute the prasadam, assisted by 4 other men. Lord Chaitanya was not accustomed to taking prasadam in small quantities. He therefore put on each plate what at least 5 men could eat. Swarup Damodar requested Lord Chaitanya, "Please sit down and watch. With these men to help me, I shall distribute the prasadam." The 4 men, Swarup Damodar, Jagadananda, Kashishwara, and Shankara, distributed the prasadam continuously. All the devotees who sat down would not eat the prasadam as long as the Lord had not eaten. On that day, however, Kashi Mishra had extended an invitation to the Lord. Therefore, Kashi Mishra personally went there and delivered prasadam to Lord Chaitanya with great attention and made him eat. With Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati, Lord Chaitanya sat down and accepted the prasadam. When he began to eat, so did all the Vaishnavas. Everyone was filled up to the neck because Lord Chaitanya kept telling the distributors, "Give them more, give them more." After all the devotees finished accepting prasadam and had washed their hands and mouths, Lord Chaitanya decorated each of them with a flower garland and sandalwood pulp. Overwhelmed with ecstatic love, Lord Chaitanya offered a benediction to all the devotees, which all the devotees heard with great satisfaction. Lord Chaitanya said and gave this benediction. "Anyone who has seen the festival of Haridas Thakur is passing away. Anyone who has chanted and danced here, anyone who has offered sand on the body of Haridas Thakur, and anyone who has joined this festival to partake of the prasadam will achieve the favor of Krishna very soon. There is such wonderful power in seeing Haridas Thakur. Being merciful upon me, Krishna gave me the association of Haridas Thakur. Being independent in his desires, he has now broken that association. When Haridas Thakur wanted to leave this material world, it was not within my power to detain him. Simply by his will, Haridas Thakur could give up his life and go away, exactly like Bhishma, who previously died simply by his own desire, as we have heard from Shastra. Haridas Thakur was the crown jewel on the head of this world. Without him, this world is now bereft of its valuable jewel. Lord Chaitanya then told everyone, say, and you can also say, "All glories to Haridas Thakur." And he told them, chant the holy name of Hari. Saying this, he personally began to dance. Everyone began to chant, "All glories to Haridas Thakur," who revealed the importance of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Thereafter, Lord Chaitanya bade farewell to all the devotees, and he himself, with mixed feelings of happiness and distress, took rest. Thus I have spoken about the victorious passing away of Haridas Thakur. Anyone who hears this narration will certainly fix his mind firmly in devotional service to Krishna. Hare Krishna. That's a nice benediction. From the instant of Haridas Thakur's passing away and the great care Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took in commemorating it, one can understand just how affectionate he is toward his devotees. Although he is the topmost of all sannyasis, he fully satisfied the desire of Haridas Thakur. When Haridas Thakur was at the last stage of his life, Lord Chaitanya gave him his company and allowed him to touch him. Thereafter, the Lord took the body of Thakur Haridas on his lap and personally danced with it. Out of his causeless mercy, the Lord personally covered the body of Haridas Thakur with sand and personally begged alms from the shopkeepers. Then the Lord conducted a great festival to celebrate the passing away of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was not only the topmost devotee of the Lord, but also a great and learned scholar. It was his great fortune that he passed away before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The life and characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are exactly like an ocean of nectar, one drop of which can please the mind and ear. Anyone who desires to cross over the ocean of nescience, please hear with great faith the life and characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Praying at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. So that's all I have. Would you like to add something? Take the mic. Vijay.
Thank you for the nice class.
Hare Krishna.
Remembrance of Haridas Thakur. When we chant this little stanza from the poetry of Bhakti Thakur, he reasons ill who say that Vaishnavas die while still living in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live in living, spread the holy name around. Bhakti Thakur was thinking of Haridas Thakur.
Thank you for reminding me for that. Yeah. He reasons ill who says that Vaishnavas die when they are living still in sound.
The Vaishnavas die to live
in living,
spread the holy name around.
The holy name. Now I saw a variation on that, and not the holy life or the something like that. You never heard that? Yeah. What is it in Bank? It says holy name. Okay. In English. It's carved in English. Okay. Yeah, because he wrote it in English. Right? Like you know. Yes, Prabhu.
You mentioned that you were reminded of Prahlad Maharaj when he tolerated the beating. And in the Gauranga-Dashtapika, it says that he was a combined incarnation of Lord Brahma and Prahlad Maharaj. So that was when Prahlad Maharaj manifest within the body. And at the Mahaprakash in Srivas Pandit's home, when the Lord exhibited his divinity and fulfilled all the desires of the devotees, revealing the Lord they worshipped, etc., and glorified them. So he called Haridas Thakur, who of course was very hesitant to come in, but he came in, and the Lord spoke of the time when he was beaten so severely by those Muslims, and he said, "I laid on your back as you were being beaten," and just to show the devotees that it was true. Like it says, one who takes shelter, what is it, Konteya Pratijani never have to worry. And Lord Chaitanya removed his chadar, and his back was shredded from the whipping that he had gotten from those Muslims.
Yeah, I think thanks for reminding us of that. Yeah.
You were mentioning that Haridas Thakur was the same age or in the same range as Advaita Acharya. So he and Lord Nityananda used to go, they were Sankirtan partners, door-to-door Sankirtan. And when you read this is another flavor of the wonderful Chaitanya Charitamrita. There's whole descriptions how they would be sent out on Harinam and they would be chased and harassed. Of course, we know the classic. I'll get to that in a minute. And Haridas Thakur Prabhupada describes would fold his hands and very humble persuasion, trying to convince. Whereas Lord Nityananda would just bang on the door, fall on the floor, roll around, knock everything over, So Haridas Thakur would say to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "Please don't send me out with this madman anymore. It's not a successful formula." And they would have to run, and ultimately they approached Jagai and Madai. And it's described that, when they first went after him, they ran back. Now, Lord Nityananda was younger, and he could make good speed. But Haridas Thakur barely made it back in time before they could grab him. So you can just imagine this wonderful scene of Lord Nityananda and Haridas Thakur doing Harinam door to door, and what a combination they are, and then giving their report daily to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This giving of scores, and what is the report to the Vaishnavas? This is our tradition, just not some mundane management, but it's relishable.
Thank you. Yeah, and I remember there was some banter going on as they were running from Jagai Madai. Now Jagai Madai were fat and they were drunk, so they really couldn't run so well, but they were still, they were chasing them. And Haridas would say, "You see, I told you it would happen, right? And, no. I'm not going out with you again." Stuff like that. Yeah. Thanks for reminding us of that. Okay. All glories to Srila Haridas Thakur, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.